Welcome to Gloria Meets, two Conservative MPs in this evening's show that I've been trying to get for absolutely ages. First up, it's Andrea Jenkyns.
It got aggressive, telling me to buy a stab vest, and he just got off with a caution. He said, I was bored and I hit the Tories. You know, and I think that is unacceptable. You can't treat people that way.
Former Conservative Cabinet Minister, now a Liberal Democrat, Stephen Dorrell.
That all politicians should remember that when they write words in electronic media, they are part of the public record that will live forever.
And senior Conservative MP William Wragg opens up about his depression.
The depression sometimes if you imagine this image, that you've fallen through a floor and then you land on the floor below. You think, goodness me, well, I've come through that and it's okay. And then you start to hear the floorboards creak around you. And, no, I'm going to be going down another level.
All that after your news.
Good afternoon, it's just past 6 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. BBC Sport coverage has been affected by last-minute changes for a second day in a row as presenters boycott the broadcaster in solidarity with Gary Lineker. Now, the Match of the Day host was asked if he still worked for the BBC this morning. I can't say anything was his response, although his eldest son says he thinks the presenter will return but will not ever back down. Six Nations coverage has gone ahead as scheduled, but 5 Live Radio Sport has been radically altered on both days of the weekend, and it's understood Match of the Day 2 will be much reduced with no presenter, pundits or commentary. The Prime Minister is flying to California to discuss the AUKUS defence deal between the UK, the US and Australia. Rishi Sunak will meet his American and Australian counterparts, during which a deal to supply British nuclear-powered submarines to Australia is likely to be confirmed. The aim of the AUKUS Pact, signed 2 years ago in 2021, is to counter China's threat in the Indo-Pacific region. The government says it will do everything it can to protect UK tech companies caught up in the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. Companies could start to experience difficulties on Monday morning. But the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says the Treasury is working to minimise the damage to what he described as some of our most promising companies in the UK. He also said they're working at pace to make sure those companies don't run out of cash. Last Friday, SVB's American parent company became the biggest failure of a US bank since the 2008 financial crisis. It is now under US government control. The Health Secretaries criticised junior doctors for failing to call off their strike action on Monday. Writing in The Telegraph, Steve Barclay described the 72-hour walkout as incredibly disappointing. The British Medical Association has described Mr Barclay's recent offer to negotiate as a feeble attempt to stall. It is expected to affect many services, including A&E, cancer care and maternity care. And it's one of the biggest nights in Hollywood as celebrities get ready for the 95th Oscar Awards. And there's plenty of British and Irish talent in the mix for a gong. The Banshees of Inisherin has become the most Oscar-nominated Irish film of all time, with 9 nominations. Bill Nye's up for Best Actor for his role in the movie Living, and Andrea Riseborough is up for the Best Actress for her role in the movie To Leslie. And it all gets underway about midnight. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. More for you at the top of the next hour.
Andrea Jenkyns, I'm so pleased that we are doing this. We've been trying to fix it for ages.
It's great to be here, Gloria.
Now, you were elected in 2015. Yeah. You defeated Ed Balls. You've always been a big Eurosceptic. You were a big supporter of Boris Johnson's premiership.
Yes.
What is your assessment of how your party is doing in a post-Boris world?
I mean, I come from a family of Eurosceptics. My mum was a massive Eurosceptic, so was my dad. I'm a Democrat. People voted for Boris, and this is why I've stridently voted and tried to secure Brexit. So I'm a Democrat, and just the way Boris got ousted within our own party, I thought it left a bad taste in our mouths, really. We've seen the knock-on effect with members not being very happy. And I think it's not a good look at how we've kept changing prime ministers. I mean, I back Liz. And I just think we've got to get on with the job which Rishi is doing. And I think it's also about trying to instill confidence in the public, because it has been, not the easiest time the last few years.
Do you think Boris Johnson might come back?
I hope he will do one day, definitely. I think he's got more to give, definitely.
Great. So you were skills minister. You were a minister
Yes.
in the dying days of that Boris Johnson premiership. You were on your way to that resignation speech in number 10. A select few of his key supporters were invited to share.
You're going to mention the
that
finger, aren't you, Gloria?
special moment. I'm going to mention the finger. You gave the middle finger.
Yes.
Why?
I mean, first of all, I didn't expect to become a minister the next day. It's sod's law, really, isn't it? Yeah. But I've had about 8 death threats over the years, and you really get sick of it. And I saw Steve Bray there. I think everybody knows Steve Bray, the anti-Brexit guy. And he's been hounding me since my little one was in his pram. Even when my little one was in his pram, there with a megaphone shouting, and I've pulled him up on that. And he's just got no respect for anybody. And I just thought, these people have got what they want now. There was all shouting. Boris is resigning, is stepping down. Leave him alone. And I just got sick of this double standards. It's okay for one group of people to treat another group a certain way, but not somebody think, sod you. So I just had enough, yeah.
And it doesn't sound like you regret it.
I don't really, no. I mean, I didn't expect to become a minister the next day. That was unexpected. But no, people should treat people better. And when you've had 6 death threats, nearly 8 death threats, when you've had to get CCTV at your home, you've had people tell you to kill yourself, you just get sick of it, to be honest.
And let's talk about some of those death threats. So in 2019, a person was taken to court for threatening to rip your face off. The year before, you received a threatening and sexually explicit email calling for you to be cut with barbed wire and die.
In my own pool of excrement, yeah.
Last year, a man was arrested for making a threat about you to your local council, I believe.
Yes, what happened was, it was my niece's wedding the next day, so I was in the local hairdressers on the high street getting my hair done, and my team ran in. We phoned the police, the local security guards at the town hall. A man said he's looking for you, he wants to blow you up. And so that's the only time I've ever wanted to quit, Gloria, because I'm quite a tough cookie, being a northerner. You're a tough cookie yourself, and you don't like being pushed into a corner. But when you've got a little one, when you've got a 5-year-old, I was sat in the hairdressers for those 10 minutes waiting for the police to arrive, and I asked the hairdressers whether they had an exit at the back door in case I needed to run. And then I was thinking, God, how do I keep them safe? And that's the only moment in politics I've ever wanted to quit. And for a good month or 2, actually, I was thinking, do I quit? Is it really worth it?
Have all the people who made those threats that I just listed...
Well, he got let off. He said it was a joke. And there was another chap who I got 70 emails, a constituent, middle-class guy, beautiful home, own business. So it's not just some loner in his bedroom on a laptop. Calling my child the devil child. It got quite sexual. It got aggressive, telling me to buy a stab vest. And he just got off with a caution. He said, I was bored and I hit the Tories. And I think that is unacceptable. You can't treat people that way.
So, with that in mind, in 2020, you provided a character reference.
Yes.
For the court case of a Conservative Party activist who made violent threats to the Labour MP, Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. He said, she will pay. I'm already organising to hurt her. Given what you've just said about how you felt.
I probably got suckered in by him in a way. I really felt sorry for me. He had an awful childhood. He told me how his father committed suicide when he was young, and And I really felt for him. And all I'd seen is this good side, really. And I knew he'd had tremendous mental health issues. So I was just saying, can we make sure that he gets the support with the mental health issues? That was the support. I mean, what he did was not acceptable in any walk of life. But I just wanted to ensure, because he needed support with his mental health.
OK. Something else that I found out when I was doing my research, when you were 18, your dad sent your picture off to a beauty pageant and you made it to the final of Miss UK. What was that like?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I love dressing up like you do, Gloria. I'm very much a girly girl. It was interesting. I mean, I remember wearing my bikini with a sarong, walking, and you know, I'm not the most elegant walker, and you know, people was taking it so seriously, and I was just stomping away, you know, on the stage, and I remember one girl was saying she was desperately needing the loo, and she's like, oh, I can't walk out there yet because the judges will see me, and I want to make an entrance. I'm like, for God's sake, you need the loo, go to the loo. So it was amazing how people took it so seriously. I just thought it was a bit of a laugh, really.
And we are recording this interview in the week of International Women's Day.
Yeah.
Do you think, with the benefit of hindsight, those things, those beauty pageants, beauty contests, women being judged on their beauty, I mean, they're a relic of the past now, aren't they?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't see any harm in it, to be honest, you know, if that's what people want to do. And I mean, I never celebrate International Women's Day. I mean, with all the trans stuff, I think, you know, we've got to realise what a woman is. But I mean, I remember under Theresa May's time, do you remember when she contacted all MPs and said, find a woman from your constituency and ask her to stand? Well, I tweeted, for true equality, I'm going to bring a bloke. And God, the backlash I got from fellow women colleagues, you're letting women down, all that rubbish. And I thought, you know, sometimes people take themselves too seriously. And I think we're very, very lucky in this country. Yes, there is misogyny around. But I think, look, we've had 3 female prime ministers. Let's focus on the positive in life as well.
Are you a feminist?
No, I'm a meritocrat. I believe whatever, you know, coming from a working class background like yourself as well, I think it's about opportunities for people. And I want the brightest and the best to have the opportunities and to really get somewhere in life and pick the best people for the jobs. I don't care whether the whole cabinet's women, whether the whole men. And I think that, you know, people are people.
And you also have another talent. You are a soprano.
Yes.
Give us...
What, you want me to sing?
Go for it.
Okay.
Let's have a bit.
Right, okay, what shall I sing? Okay, right. God on high, hear my prayer, in my need, you have always been there.
God, that really...
Oh, well, thank you.
It sent a shiver down my spine.
I write songs as well. I've got a song, I released an album myself in the early 2000s, and it's called ELIS. It's an acronym for I Love You in Secret. The name came to me in a dream. I've got a song where I sing backwards. So I like quirky songs as well.
Very talented, gosh. You'd be good on a karaoke night.
Maybe we can do it together, Gloria.
Yeah. I don't think I'd put you through that. You are a mum.
Yes.
You have a son with the Conservative MP Jack Lepresti, who you married in 2017. Yes. I'm always fascinated to know how anyone can date and fall in love in Parliament.
Yeah. Well, it can strike in the most unusual places, can't it? Yeah. But I think anybody who's a mum in any walk of life realises it's a juggle. And living 200 miles apart, now Clifford's school age at 5, you can't go to 2 different schools. That's the juggle, being a mum and trying to be the best mum. I get mummy guilt every day. I adore my little boy. Yeah.
We were supposed to do this interview last year. It had to be delayed. Your mum went to hospital. Your mum died.
Yes.
How are you?
God, to be honest, Gloria, it was the worst time of my life. My mum was my rock. She was amazing. And we found out in November, she was really bizarre behaviour. She had a benign tumour on the brain. And 3 days after, so she was in hospital, 3 days after that, my sister went into a coma unexpectedly and was in a coma and died, had to be resuscitated and come back. And then she was paralysed and I couldn't tell Mum that. And Mum survived an amazing 8.5-hour operation to remove the tumour, but then she got sepsis. And honestly, I didn't feel in my own body at times. It was horrific. Being with Mum the last 36 hours when I was holding her hand, the medication they gave her, which pumps the, the blood around the main organs. So it pulled it from the extremities, so she started getting necrosis. Her face was going blue, her tongue was going black, and trying to get that image out of my mum's face, it was horrific. Yeah, I mean, my sister, she still can't walk, she's still... It's probably the worst time of my life, but I survived it. And the hardest part, really, was for my little one, Clifford. He's telling him that his nana's died, and he said to me, "Mummy, I know why she died." He said, when I was 4, I got under her feet and she fell over and hit her head. She's died because of me, Mummy. That was the hardest thing ever explaining to a 5-year-old. It's not you, my darling. Yeah.
It's been such a tough time for you.
It's been horrible, yeah. But other people go through bad stuff as well. But both going through at the same time. That was hard. And it was a really tale of two cities, a tale of two hospitals. My sister, she lives in Hay-on-Wye and went to Hereford Hospital. She had an amazing treatment. I mean, even the nurse went and got her a KFC a couple of weeks ago because she'd missed it because she'd been in hospital all these months. But my mum, it was awful care. The amount of times I walked in, she was drenched in her own urine, covered in her own food, and I had to change the sheets. And she was covered in sick one time, and it was really a tale of two hospitals. It was horrific, Gloria.
I'm sorry you went through.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you went through that. I could talk to you for so much longer.
I could too.
We're almost out of time. Just final question. Yeah. It's budget week next week. One call, one thing that you want Jeremy Hunt to say in that budget.
It'd be lower taxes. That affects everybody. And also including corporation tax. You know, post-Brexit Britain, we need to be ready for business, be attractive for investment, which will help the economy.
Andrea Jenkyns, I knew you'd be great. I've loved it.
Ditto, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Coming up, former Conservative Health Secretary Stephen Dorrell.
The ideal outcome is Keir Starmer leading a minority Labour government that then has to deal with the point that our political system is broken.
Coming up, senior Conservative MP William Wragg.
I do take a reasonably mild dose of sertraline each day. Which, as your viewers may be familiar, is an antidepressant and also has particular helpful effects with regards to anxiety.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Stephen Dorrell, you were a Conservative MP from 1979 to 2015. You were a big figure in the party, held various cabinet jobs. Why on earth are you now a member of the Liberal Democrats?
Well, I have a simple way of summarising that, which is that I didn't leave my party left me. So I was actually a member of the Conservative Party for 49 years. I joined it when Ted Heath was leading Britain into Europe. I left it when Theresa May was leading Britain out of Europe, and the two things are connected. I was, at the time that I left the Tory party, I was chair of the European movement, because I passionately believe that Brexit is a fundamental mistake, what John Major actually describes as an historic mistake, which, as I often say, is as close as John ever gets to using bad language in public.
But the people voted for it. It's a democracy, right?
Yeah, they didn't vote for the Brexit we've got. They voted, it's absolutely true they voted for Brexit. There were a wide range of Brexits on offer, and we've chosen the most damaging. Or rather, I should be much more precise. The faction that currently controls the Tory party chose the most damaging option of Brexit.
Is there any way back for you to come back to the Conservative Party? Is that remotely possible?
No, is the short answer, because I do believe that the Tory party is responsible for an extremely damaging version of Brexit. That's the first reason. There's actually a second reason. And on this, I freely acknowledge I've changed my view. I've always been an advocate of the two-party system on the basis that you have two permanent coalitions and invite the voters to choose between them. I'm now opposed to the two-party system because what's actually happened around Brexit's the most egregious example, but actually my own area of particular personal interest in the health service is another victim of the two-party system, in my view. What it does is to reduce political discussion to a binary choice between two structures. And those structures are victims, both of them in the last 10 years, of factional politics where the voters simply aren't involved. The Labour Party, that was true of the Corbyn years. The Tory party has been true of the Brexit argument. And what I therefore believe we now ought to have in this country is a more plural, a more nuanced political system. And for that, you need electoral reform, which is why I'm now a Liberal Democrat.
But we don't have electoral reform yet. We won't have it for the next general election. You're going to wake up with Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. Who would you rather see?
My dream outcome is Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, because I think he'd be better placed to do some short-term things than the current Tory party, but with a very important qualification. The ideal outcome is Keir Starmer leading a minority Labour government that then has to deal with the point that our political system is broken.
Do you know, it's remarkable what you've said, because I grew up, when I was getting into politics, you were this big figure that I remember from the Tory party, and it's quite extraordinary to hear you say that when push came to shove, you would prefer to wake up with a Labour Prime Minister.
Because I think Keir Starmer is in better control, and this is a relative measurement, in better control of the dangerous factions in the Labour Party than Rishi Sunak is in control of the dangerous factions of the Tory Party. Really
interesting. One of the cabinet jobs that you had, this was under John Major, you were Health Secretary. The NHS is never far from the top of our political debate, discussion, priorities. Imagine you're back behind your desk, you're Health Secretary today. What's the number one thing that you're going to tackle?
That actually is easy today, which is to remember that the health service can't deliver anything unless it got full engagement from all the staff of the health service and a realistic workforce plan for the health service and also for the social care system. And so I think the highest priority for Steve Barclay, and it, as has been the case since he was appointed, now getting on for 6 months ago, is to sort out the pay issues and to re-engage with the workforce of the NHS, and to set out his plan for how the workforce of the NHS is going to be developed over the coming period beyond the end of this Parliament.
Did you have a constructive relationship with the health unions when you were Health Secretary?
Like any health secretary, I had a occasionally testy relationship with the trade unions. But what I would like to think is that whether it's the BMA and the representatives of the medical profession, or the RCN and the other nursing unions, and importantly, the other people who work in the health service, is that, first of all, importantly, my door was always open. I was always happy to talk to them. Secondly, I am a believer in the review body system that takes the immediate issues of pay out of day-to-day politics, because I think that creates more space for the dialogue that ought to take place between the person who's politically responsible for the NHS and the social care system. I insist on linking the two together. The person who's politically responsible for them, and the representatives of the people who deliver them. It isn't the health secretary that delivers the healthcare system, blindingly, obviously. But if you're going to deliver your political objectives, you have to have an open line of dialogue with the people who represent the staff of the system.
More from Stephen Dorrell after the break.
You only win in politics if you explain to people who don't agree with you why you should do what you want to do.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Let's use the benefit of your experience and those decades of perspective. You were in Parliament for many prime ministers, from Thatcher to May.
I was never actually. I left in 2015. So David Cameron
was your
my
last
prime minister.
Your
as
last
an MP.
prime minister. If you had to single out one or two, I'll let you have three if you insist, as the most impressive figures in those 40 years, who are you going to plump for?
So, well, I think history will be very clear that there are two in that list that left their imprint on the country. And one of whom is obviously Margaret Thatcher. I voted for the Thatcher government, supported the Thatcher government throughout its tenure. I never described myself as a Thatcherite at the time, and I'm certainly not going to describe myself in that language now. But you can't take away from the fact, and this is where today's sort of Thatcherite monkey, I think they misunderstand the nature of Margaret Thatcher. She was a very, very skilled politician. She knew how to build a coalition, including, in my case, people who didn't fundamentally agree with her instincts, but were prepared to empower her to do things that needed to be done. So she's an impressive figure. And the other figure that history will clearly remember is Tony Blair, who made a huge mistake in Iraq. I say that as somebody who voted for Iraq, so I'm not seeking to rewrite history. It was a huge historical error. But nonetheless, Tony, and I've worked with him clearly in the European argument more recently, reasonably closely. I like Tony Blair, and I respect the fact that there's a phrase he uses a lot, which I think is 100% right and is missed by most politicians most of the time, which is that democracy is government by explanation. And ministers have to be prepared to explain what they're doing if they're going to invite people to support them.
And one other issue where I want to get the benefit of your perspective, it's sort of accepted at the moment that politics is incredibly toxic, that there has never been so much abuse directed towards politicians. There must have been toxicity and abuse in your time, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's toxicity levels rise and fall. I mean, the only time I remember walking through Loughborough Market and being personally abused was at the time of the community charge, the poll tax. So there was a high level of toxicity then, deservedly in my view, but that's now all history. So toxicity, I think, rises and falls. What I think is genuinely different today is the willingness of politicians to talk to their echo chamber. I've seen it said multiple times by politicians actually on both sides of the political divide, which is why I don't like the two-party system. People think, the people say. What they actually mean is my Twitter sphere, my Twitter followers say, because they don't actually talk to the people on the other side of the argument. I think, and this is actually one thing that I attribute, both in fairness, Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair understood you only win in politics if you explain to people who don't agree with you why you should do what you want to do. Today's politicians talk to their supporters. They forget the people whose support they need if they're going to create a majority.
Very well put, if I may say so. Let's come to the current day. Over the last couple of weeks, we've seen the release of lots of WhatsApp messages, the lockdown files, the revelations about decisions that were taken during the pandemic, which we were not aware of how they were formulated. What lessons can we learn from what we now know as a result of those leaked messages?
Well, I suppose there are three things we can learn. The first is the simplest one, which is that all politicians should remember that when they write words in electronic media, they are part of the public record that will live forever. So first point, that's a pretty simple mechanistic point. The second point is, in a sense, the least important, which is that given that we have access to those private messages, I think we should screen out some of the sillier things, the most obviously silly things that are said in those messages, because I actually think there's a third point that's really seriously important, which is that government is a public process, and the decisions that are made by government, when people talk about process, it sounds as though they're kind of boring accountants and, you know, have we ticked the box and have we covered all the bases? Tony Blair, I've already talked about the mistakes of the Iraq War. When the inquiry reported on the Iraq War, it said that one of the key failings was what it called sofa government. Well, what we've got in these WhatsApp messages is exactly the same phenomenon in the middle of the pandemic. There is process in government for a reason. It is a public process. And I think these WhatsApp messages and the mistakes that they led to reinforce again the dangers of sofa government.
Stephen Dorrell, an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, senior Conservative MP William Wragg.
Some within government that they thought that they could overtly control the voting behaviour of members of Parliament by either directly or implicitly threatening to withdraw projects and funding from their constituencies, which I don't think is acceptable.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236. And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stumped.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Conservative MP William Wragg, I have been harassing you for months to try and get this interview, so thank you for finally giving it.
Only in a very polite way.
Very, very polite. This is what you wrote last August. I have lived with depression and anxiety for most of my adult life. At the moment, both are severe. How are you now?
I'm fine, as we always say. In response to that question, I'm certainly not feeling as I did in August, and feeling genuinely much better, much more positive, much happier, dare I say it. And I think, you know, the clouds or the black dog, it comes and goes throughout life. And I think the summer was a particularly acute period of it.
When did you first become aware of your depression?
Probably when I was at university. And I think, therefore, on and off at various stages of my life, it has been there. And I think I class depression and anxiety of the different sides of the same coin. I think they quite often come as a pairing in that way. And certainly through the time that I've been an MP, yeah, there have been some tough spells, but nothing quite as affecting as it was over the course of the last summer.
Can you tell us a little bit, whatever you feel comfortable with, about how it affects you?
Well, depression in my case is a profound numbness to the world and people around me. And it's entirely out of character, because actually, despite the impression I may give to some people, I quite like other people, by and large, and get on with most people, and enjoy the company of others, and generally I'm enthusiastic about the things that I apply myself to. So when that all sort of drains away from you, it's very noticeable. And certainly that was the state that I'd found myself in during the summer. But also, you have heightened anxiety, and everybody has anxiety from time to time, and it's quite natural, frankly, to feel nerves and apprehension, the sorts of things. But when that becomes an anxiety and apprehension about everyday things, from getting up in the morning to going out for a walk, to doing this, that and the other, then it's not the everyday run-of-the-mill stuff, and really it's quite serious.
What do you do when you're having an episode? What sort of treatment is available?
Well, for me, I'm much better at identifying it, but I haven't actually, before the summer, spoken publicly of it. Close friends knew, and I'm sure people throughout my life have noticed times where inexplicable disappearances, where I sort of retreat and take time for myself. Long walks in a sort of old romantic sense along, moorlands and headlands and all this, that and the other. But I think really it usually requires me to take a bit of time out and a bit of time away. And it was only on this occasion that I actually explained what it was, rather than people, being curious as to, where's he gone? What's happened to him?
And why did you decide to go public last year for the first time?
Because I wanted to hold myself accountable for getting better. And the only way I could see at that time in doing so was to make it clear what it was, rather than it being some sort of secret that lurked away, and I think would have, the likelihood would be that it would come back more frequently, because it made myself accountable. It took me a while perhaps to do everything that I needed to do, because being public about something, you do feel a sense of, well, I've done that, good on me, I can, relax. But no, actually, I liken the depression sometimes to, if you imagine this image, that you've fallen through a floor and then you land on the floor below and think, goodness me, well, I've come through that and it's okay. And then you start to hear the floorboards creak around you. And no, I'm going to be going down another level. And so I think it's sort of trying to break out of that cycle. And I think being public about it, that was my means of doing so.
Is there anything you can do to help yourself emerge from that darkness?
Yeah. And a lot of it is yourself. Yes, you can have the support of other people, but I do think you need to have that self-awareness in order to drive yourself, and that can be a very, very, very small step, simple things. But without that, I don't think you can be entirely lifted from that state, from external things.
Do you think the political environment, the nature of our politics, does it exacerbate or amplify your mental health?
Does it not? I don't think well, I don't know, because it's not really a controlled experiment, is it? Because I'm not, if I'm not in a different situation. So all life in different occupations have their challenges, which can, there's nothing unique to politicians. I think there's something quite unique to a certain pressurised environment in the political world, but that can be in other public-facing roles and roles of leadership as well, where the expectation, of course, is that you will remain impermeably strong and set an example to others. So I think you will find it in different walks of life. I wouldn't necessarily say that politics is conducive to having your mind in a happy sense of equilibrium all of the time, though.
This may be too private a question, and you can not answer. Medication, therapy?
Well, I resisted medication for some time, because on previous occasions I think I spent the best part of a few years. When I'd just become an MP, actually, I was on a course of medication for a few years, and I, rather in my unilateral way, decided to come off that without any thought of what the withdrawal might be to it, but that was the way that I dealt with things then. And so it took a bit of time for me on this occasion. But no, I do take a reasonably mild dose of sertraline each day, which, as your viewers may be familiar, is an antidepressant, and also has particular helpful effects with regards to anxiety.
Good. Well, I'm pleased to hear that at the moment you're feeling much more like yourself.
Yes, whatever that is, yeah.
Thank you for describing the nature of your depression and anxiety. You're only 35.
But yeah, I've not weathered well.
You were elected to Parliament in 2015. You're not going to stand at the next election?
No. Well, I wouldn't want people to think it's an immediate follow-on from our previous conversation. I mean, the most shocking thing that seemed to be the case when I announced I wasn't going to stand was people suddenly realised how young I was, because I've been, pretending to be much older than I am for many, many years. And but it's not linked to my bout of mental ill health, although that did give me a perspective that there may well be more to life, dare I say it, than politics. I'm sure you might attest yourself. So it's much more of a positive choice. I think that when you do something for will be the best part of 10 years or so, and my misspent youth was getting into Westminster. And there's obviously an element of me that thinks that there must be more to life. It's not to say I will miss it terribly, because despite all of the ups and downs, if I can put it that way, I really do enjoy being a Member of Parliament. And I think there is something unique in that, which unless you have experienced it, it's hard sometimes for others to quite appreciate what that unique quality is. And so I'll miss it, but I'm certainly made the decision in a positive fashion. I don't want people to get their little violins out for me. And I'm quite looking forward to doing other things in the future.
Yeah, and I can testify that there is sunshine away from those green benches. As you say, it's a wonderful privilege. Nobody else can appreciate just how wonderful it is, but there are limits for everyone. Right, let's talk a little bit about politics, because you caused controversy when you stood up in the House of Commons. This was when Boris Johnson was coming under pressure to stand down, really, as leader of the Conservative Party. And you made the allegation that there was blackmail of a nature of MPs, Conservative MPs, who were threatening to oust Boris Johnson, that if they stepped out of line, they could lose constituency funding. I know you've met with the police about those allegations at their invitation. You told me before we came out. Where are we with that?
Well, that never particularly went further with the police, but I stand by what I said at that committee session, because I witnessed and had testimony from colleagues about the pressures that they were coming under, which I felt was not just unacceptable in a political sense, but I thought wasn't how you should treat people. And in saying so, a number of people came forward with their experiences, and indeed we've seen as recently as this morning in the press an example whereby this kind of tactic had been deployed in a different context. And so I think there was a cultural problem at the time within government that they thought that they could overtly control the voting behaviour of members of Parliament by either directly or implicitly threatening to withdraw projects and funding from their constituencies, which I don't think is acceptable.
What do we do about it? Has it always been a tool for the executive?
Well, lots of things have always happened. Whether they're acceptable is a different question entirely. I think the best way in politics, if you want to get people on board, is to convince members of Parliament of the strength of an argument. And when that argument is relatively flimsy and people are growing tired and wearisome of it, that might be a reflection on the argument. So I don't think strong-arm tactics are the best way. But just because it's always happened doesn't mean it's the right and healthy thing for our democracy.
Do you think we might see the return of Boris Johnson in a leading role at any point?
Well, it wouldn't be for me to say. It might not surprise you that it wouldn't necessarily be at my invitation.
William Wragg, the reason I wanted to do this interview, the reason why I have been pinging those messages to you for so many months, is because I wanted to show that leading people in public life, are humans just like the rest of us, with the same strains and stresses that many of the rest of the nation endure. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. I'm back next Sunday at 6. Join me.
Hello, I'm Craig Snow and here's your latest forecast from the Met Office. Well, as we look ahead to the new working week, for all of us it's going to stay unsettled and the risk of some further snow at times. So here's the situation as we end Sunday. Got this mild air coming in from the Atlantic, but cold air is always close by across the far north of the UK. And as we go through the next few days, that in fact will sink its way back towards the south. But for the rest of Sunday, we've got this band of rain working its way northwards. As it bumps up into that cold air across the far north, we will see some sleet and snow, especially across the high ground. And to the south of it, increasingly windy, especially along southern counties. Could see some coastal gales here come the end of the night. Temperatures for many mild, 10 to 11 in most towns and cities across the south, a touch of frost across the very far north. And this cold air will sink its way southwards as we go through Monday, so the rain turning increasingly to sleet and snow, even at lower levels at times across Scotland. So there are warnings in force, could see some disruption here throughout the day. Further south, mild but blustery, risk of some rain, especially across northern England, Wales and southwest England, highs reaching 14 to 15 degrees. Into the evening, the cold air continues to transfer its way southwards, so risk of some snow across Northern Ireland, Northern England and eventually into Wales and the Midlands. So again, could see a covering of snow in places, chiefly across the high ground as we go through the course of the night. And then cold behind it, could see some fairly widespread icy stretches come Tuesday morning. So Tuesday morning's commute could be a bit tricky across northern and central parts. Again, expect some disruption here. But all in all, Tuesday is going to be a cold day for all of us once any early rain clears the very far southeast. A mixture of sunny spells and wintry showers, even some sleet and snow possible across the far south, but chiefly across the north as we go through the course of the day. And temperatures struggling compared to recent days, but that cold theme doesn't last for too long in the south. It turns milder but wetter on Wednesday.
On Mark Dolan tonight, following the fierce debate around Gary Lineker, the message is a clear one. What's the point in having borders if you don't police them? Stop the boats might be unpopular among millionaire ex-footballers, but for ordinary Brits, it's time to sort this issue out once and for all. It might take at 10 as people borrow money for private operations and pay to tutor their kids at home. The public sector isn't working. Plus, politics legend Anne Widdecombe, my all-star panel, and former Labour MP Simon Danchuk. See you at 9.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the